Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Ward 5 Douglasville Town Hall meeting. This is the second one that I've hosted. The one I had last year was at Factory Shoals Middle School. Now we're here in Lithia Springs, which is in the city of Douglasville. This part of it is. So we've actually hit both sides, both extremes of the ward. Who knows where we'll do it next year? Maybe at Sweetwater Creek State Park. So I want to welcome you all here. I'm glad you're here. We're going to talk about some interesting stuff. We're going to talk about what's going on with the Southwest Thornton Road study that's been going on. We're going to talk about economic development in this area of the city, and we're going to talk about SPLOST, and then we'll take your questions. Probably take questions all along, but at the end we'll have Q&A. I want to introduce some people who are here. Some will be speaking, some I won't let speak. Just kidding. Right over here we have Chris Pumphrey, who is the Executive Director of the Economic Development Authority of Douglas County and also serves in that role for the city's Development Authority. We have City Manager MARCIA HAMPTON. We have Jonathan LYNN, who is the Director of the city's no, wait, don't tell me, I'll get this. Community and Development Services. That's it? Very good, very good. We also have Ron Wilson in the back, who is the chairman of the board of the county's Development Authority. And Anna Ellis Perry is on the board as well. Let's bring up the mayor to say a few words. Our mayor, Her Honor, Rochelle Robinson.
Thank you so much. Welcome. This is such a great turnout. I tell you, I'm really excited, elated to have Richard on the City Council. He is an intricate part of the team. He brings forward such innovative ideas. And I think that is an indication of the people that live in his ward. So thank you so much again for coming this evening. We have lots of things ready for you to talk about and for you to see and ask questions. And keep sending Richard to City Hall to bid for you. He makes us a better place. So welcome Mr. Richard Segal, one of our great intricate parts of the team. Like I said, we couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much for all of your hard work.
Photo op.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. All right, so we're going to start off with Chris Pumphrey coming up here. He's got his own mic. So if you could let us know why the Southwest Thornton Road study is going on, where we are in the process, and where we are going forward from this point, please.
Yes, sir. Being that we are the economic development group representing both the city and the county, it means that we deal with businesses that are interested in both the city and county and businesses that are currently located in the city and county. And it's very important that when we're talking to businesses that we're able to explain to them what they can expect or how things are going to work wherever they intend to locate. And if we aren't able to explain to them what they can expect, then it makes it a bit more difficult for them to make a decision to locate here. And so as you see by these lovely maps here that are up front, these are highlighted of the ward, this ward for Douglasville. And everything that's not highlighted is unincorporated Douglas County. So in an area that has seen 25% of all the region's industrial growth over the last 5 years, it's pretty difficult. It's important that there's a consistency between both jurisdictions. And not only the industrial growth, but the commercial growth, the residential growth that has taken place. It's consistent that we have a message that is representative of both the city and the county. That's good, sir. Thank you. So we haven't had that for quite some time. We haven't had that consistency and that clarity. And so we talked with our leadership at the city and at the county, staff in both jurisdictions to say, look, we need to put a plan in place such that when we talk to companies, when we talk to the community, that we are both singing from the same hymn book, because we haven't been for quite some time. So we took the lead, and our board gave us the green light to go hire Kimley Horn to do a master plan of this area. And so it's basically looking at the land uses throughout both the unincorporated Douglas County and the city of Douglasville, looking at what the growth trends are, what does the market say is going to happen over the next 10 years, and what is the infrastructure necessary to support what the market is saying right now. And is projecting to happen. So we talked to a lot of the residents. I know I've seen a lot of your faces in the meetings that we've had over at the Hilton Garden Inn. And we talked to a number of the businesses in the area, kind of trying to figure out what are their pinch points, what are the things that they like, what are the things that they don't like. And come to find out, the businesses and you all and us as residents, I live in this area too, we all want the same thing. The conflict has come with our developers who don't seem to think that we all want the same thing. So we've had to kind of elevate and ensure that your voices are being heard, that the employers' voices are being heard, and their employees are being heard. And then really figure out how can we craft and put together a vision for this corridor, and figuring out what the gaps are. I think it's very apparent that we're very strong in industrial over in this area. This is the one of two employment bases here in Douglas County. This sector has grown very significantly over the last 15, 20 years. And as I mentioned earlier, if you would take from south of I-20 along Thornton Road down Riverside Parkway, 25% of the Atlanta region's industrial growth happened in this area. That's a lot of development, thinking in a region of 5 million or so people, has happened right here. But with that, there's been quality companies that have come here. The average wage over the last 5 years has raised significantly. And so it's been good jobs that have come here, albeit a lot of those have come with a lot of trucks, and a lot of residents don't like a lot of trucks. I want them. But they're important to commerce. Without trucks, the commerce doesn't happen. Without commerce, the services and amenities don't happen. And so we need to figure out how do we find the balance between residential and industrial and commercial growth. And so thus, that's the reason of this plan. So we've had the open houses. We're winding down the process. Jonathan and Tracy Rye over at the county have been working diligently on the ordinance recommendations coming from the consultant. We've got infrastructure recommendations that have been made, looking at where new roadways should be put in, how new roadways should be rerouted. Existing roadways should be rerouted. There's a lot of R's in there. But figuring out all of those pieces and how they work together. And then the other component to it is taking advantage of the biggest asset that we have in this area. Is Georgia's most visited state park is Sweetwater Creek State Park. But for all of us that don't live off of Mount Vernon Road or live, on Lee Road, it's pretty much like a 5-mile drive in order to get into the park that may be in our backyards. And so we've been working very closely with the state parks and the Department of Natural Resources, and trying to partner with them to open up access to the park on the east side, and looking at the park as more of an amenity, which obviously is good for residents, it's good for property values, it's good for employees as well. And so we're pulling all of these components together to really make a solid plan, addressing all of the concerns. The county and city approved a SPLOST last year. That SPLOST had about $10 million set aside for transportation related to economic development. About a month ago, the county leadership went up to New York, talked to bond investors, and came back and now have the approval to issue a portion of that, the expected collected taxes and bonds. I don't know the exact amount, but I do know in that first tranche, $7 million is set aside for investment in this area. So that is to come. Kimley Horn should be making a presentation. We'll be working on setting up some joint meetings between the elected officials of both the county and the city in the coming weeks. Hint, hint. We'll be looking to set that up, and then moving towards their adoption. The moratorium that we have in place right now basically will not allow for rezonings in this area until we're able to complete that plan, adopt the ordinances, and that expires June 20th. So it's approaching very quickly. So we're looking to have that done before June 20th, but we gave ourselves hopefully enough cushion to allow it to get done. So believe that sums up everything. We'll take questions later.
I think we can take questions.
All right.
Anyone have a question? Kelly will come by with the microphone. Just raise your hand. Wow, looks like you got off easy. Oh, wait, there you go. Okay. All right, start here. No, come over here.
I can feel it.
Go over there. Over there.
Hi, I'm Jim Favre. Of the $7 million that's out of that bond money, what does most of that money go to?
It's going to be geared towards infrastructure, primarily road infrastructure, or maybe it's road and sidewalks, but something transportation related. It's going to go to, there's not a specific project right now. The city and county will kind of jointly kind of make that decision of where the funds are best suited. But the consultant is also kind of putting together kind of a highest and best use. You know, how can you better leverage that $7 million? In terms of infrastructure investment, $7 million is not a lot of money. One of the roads we looked at was like, what, 30-something million dollars? That's just one road, and it was a residential road. So $7 million will get you a little bit, but we want to figure out how we can best leverage that and work along with the private developers to make it a reality. Sir.
Hi, my name is Anthony Robinson. I actually live right here in the subdivision.
Yeah.
You can come to my house right now if you want. I'm
Sure.
right here.
As long as you got good food, yeah.
I can cook, man. I got a grill and everything.
Cool.
Anyway, my question is, it's kind of what you just touched on in that last question that you were asked as it relates to Douglas County or the city. Mm-hmm. When you come into Douglas, I look at this as like this is the beginning of Douglas County, right? How do you beautify and make this look more welcoming when people come in? Because, you see some stuff, but it's kind of like it needs some change or some updating. Like, so for instance, you go to Smyrna, right? They're doing a lot of upgrades. Yeah, you have the ball field coming that's there and everything, but just throughout Smyrna, you can see that they're upgrading things, even from just the lamp posts, right throughout the city.
Right.
That's my first question that you can come back to. My other question is that I live right here, and speaking about the SPLOS, right? Did I say it correctly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay. Our road, so you can everyone can come look at the road, and you come right here, make a right, come all the way through the subdivision.
Yeah.
I've been there for 11 years. He's been there for 14 years. Road has never been resurfaced at all, right?
Yeah.
I think us as homeowners, we've done a pretty good job keeping it, doing some good upkeep on the roads ourselves. Mm-hmm. No, we're not patching roads, but if you come look at it, you can see that it needs some resurfacing. So how would the SPLOS apply to us being residents right here with all of this going on around us? And third question, when you make this right here as well, when you make this right, you'll see that there's two large signs. We've already been down to City Hall and all that stuff about the warehouses that they're trying to build right here.
Right.
So I'm circling back to my first question, or my first statement.
Yeah.
You have a subdivision right here where people, kids, school buses in and out all day. Mm-hmm. What sense does it make to actually have another warehouse like the FedEx over there or the Amazon down the street right here on this small road?
So I think I could address all three of those. I think it was three.
I'll take number two.
Yes.
Number two is easy.
I was going to pass number two off anyways.
Well,
that was my addressing it.
Number two, put me up. Number two, when we get to the SPLOS discussion after Mr. Pumphrey and Mr. LYNN, we'll talk about that.
Yep.
So we'll just park it for now.
Yeah.
Back to
Cool.
you.
So let's go to number three first. So number three really ties into the Kimley-Horn master plan. Some of the property is already zoned, and so we can't change an owner's zoning. We can make recommendations on future land use. We can put various, kind of requirements as it relates to that zoning, but things that are already zoned are pretty much impossible for us to change. Now, things that need to be rezoned, we have a lot of influence on that, and that's where casting the vision comes. So the particular signs that you're representing, that you're referencing, I know they're pretty much showing property that's already zoned. There's some other pieces that aren't, that's another, debate. But that's where the Kimley-Horn Master Plan comes into play, is really kind of figuring out how you have compatible land uses and what infrastructure is necessary to help that compatibility. So that's that piece. But I completely understand what you're saying. Back to the first question. That what you described are the efforts of a CID, a community improvement district. And that is something that we desperately need in Douglas County. I think there's two prime areas for a CID. One is Thornton Road, pretty much coming from Bankhead Highway all the way down pretty much to Blair's Bridge Road. And then another one is around Arbor Place Mall. I think those are the two prime areas for a community improvement district. And just, I'll give you a 10-second blurb on what those are. Is basically commercial property owners come together to self-tax themselves for the enhancement of their community. It's only on commercial property owners, not on residential, and they basically kind of take the lead and leverage their dollars to make those investments. And they work with the state and work with the local jurisdiction to invest in that area. But the community improvement districts, so particularly around where the Brave Stadium is, that's the Cumberland CID. It's probably the oldest CID in Atlanta. If you think about Perimeter Mall, where they just did that new interchange, that's the Perimeter CID. They made those investments. There's a Aerotropolis CID right now around Camp Creek Parkway. Just if you didn't know, that interchange at Camp Creek in 285 is going to be a diverging diamond. So those are the groups that make those investments in infrastructure, sidewalks, street lamps, facades, and things. The local jurisdictions can do some, but with the limited amount of funds, you have to prioritize. And so a lot of the beautification comes in those improvement districts. So, yes.
Did you answer the question, Richard? You answered your portion.
Yeah, I said we're parking it till the end.
Yeah.
We get to Splost, we'll talk about that.
So my name's Keith Burnett, and I live in Tributary off of Riverside, where all the other warehouses are.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ray, with the growth that we've seen
With the warehouses.
next to a warehouse, with the growth that we've seen that you mentioned, why aren't we building some of that CID money into the cost of doing business with the contracts with these businesses, where they can actually turn around and recontribute back into the community? To this gentleman's point over here, from a resident's perspective, we see all this commercial growth, but we see no reinvestment back into the district, to the lamppost, to the whatever. Where's all that going? Second of all, I'd like to know, you mentioned the communication that you're making to the businesses as to what they can expect. What benefits are you telling them to bring them to Douglas County? And then on the offset to that, how does that impact, and what's your message to residents?
Okay. So the first one, I have to lean on MARCIA on some of that, MARCIA and Jonathan on some of that one. There are certain requirements that the county or city in their code of their ordinance requires of those businesses. Whether, let's look at the sidewalk in front of Cahey. That was a requirement, for them to put that sidewalk in. There are certain requirements they can do. There's certain things that kind of exceed the developer's ability to afford. You can't force a CID onto a business. They have to elect to do a CID. The property owner themselves, that property owner has to say, I want to self-tax myself. The local jurisdiction, the city or county, can't force that on them. It's just, that's the way the law, the statute is written. You can't force that property owner to tax themselves more for those improvements. They have to elect to do that. And that governing body is those property owners. Those property owners govern themselves. There's some influence from the city and county in that, but if there's anything in that you want to add.
No, Chris brought up probably the biggest point. When you see those, sorry, Kelly, somebody get your mic. When you see those CIDs, whether it be Cumberland CID, whether it be Perimeter, Town Lake Parkway, all of those things that you see, those are entities within themselves that are choosing to provide that infrastructure. The local jurisdiction, whether it be the city or the county, does not have any authority over the CID. CID, when you go, you can look them up, you can pull up their budgets. A CID, for instance, the Cumberland CID's budget is probably 5 times that of the city, if not more than that. So their resources are generated and their revenue based on what Chris is mentioning, their property taxes, and they're electing themselves to basically provide a portion of their taxes to go back into the area. We had some conversations, particularly with the mall, because a lot of it has to do with the value of the tax base, that the taxes that are generated. And typically when you're in an area where there's primarily only one business that is the primary driver for that tax base, often they're not going to be the ones that are going to be willing to step out on their own. It's going to have to be a situation, for instance, like a Cumberland, where you have a variety of businesses that are there to help to support that tax base. If not, that one entity is going to say, hey, why am I the only ones? I will just say this, and I know we're parking the SPLOST conversation. Some of the things that you all are mentioning when we do talk about SPLOST, I can talk about some of the things that we as city and the city officials are looking at doing. Are the city officials deciding to step out and make the decision? Now, what that means is that they're going to do a little bit, but they can't do everything. So that's kind of why the CIDs are very important throughout the state, but there are several of them.
The other question dealt with what are we telling businesses? Quite a few things. One, you can't beat our access. I mean, these businesses are here for a reason. Whether they're industrial, we're in between 2 intermodal yard facilities, and intermodal basically being up Camp Creek, where the Norfolk Southern intermodal facility is. That is traffic coming directly from the Port of Savannah. So those are products being imported into the state. So they're locating near that. We're also in between another one in Fairburn. That's the CSX intermodal yard. You also can't beat the fact that we're on the same road as the world's most traveled and most efficient airport. That's a huge selling point. The fact that we border the most populated counties in the state in Cobb and Fulton. So there's the access to talent in workforce and labor force. And the cost of living is good in the region as a whole. It's very good here in Douglas County. So you've got access to talent, workforce, cost of doing business. Those are all favorable things. Now, after a while, you have the retention component. And the retention is, how do you keep the business here? And how does the business keep the employees here? And so those are other things that I didn't talk about that we're working on. So we're talking to companies about what their workforce challenges are. We're working one-on-one with them. We're talking about the challenges with transit. That is a huge issue right now. We are disconnected from the rest of the region as it relates to transit. So we're talking to the businesses about that, and even had a meeting last week where the businesses said they're willing to help subsidize transportation just to keep employees here and to attract more employees. So those are a lot of the things that we talk about, but then the master plan is another effort to help elevate that message as well about making this area more attractive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one more question.
One more
Oh,
question.
we got one more question. How you doing, sir? Good to see you again.
Kevin McGuire. I also live in Tributary. Getting back to the point of the beautification of this gentleman's question, a couple of small things that may be worthwhile is monument signs or something. When you come into the county, saying Douglas County, some really nice looking monument signs. Yeah. Clean up those intersections. You have the only 4 entry points from Fulton Industrial are across the Chattahoochee. And you have some nice areas. Do they all have to be done at the same time? No, you have a sign design, and every year you knock one out and keep going. It's just, I don't think that's going to cost that much money. Yeah. Another thing is also the bridges that we have over here. If you look at, if you go up 85 as you're coming south, and they're around Norcross area, those bridges, they've done a fantastic job dressing those things up. They look like works of art.
Yeah.
One of the Bridges on 85 broke, right?
I'm talking a little further north than that one. And I don't think they store anything under this bridge
Yeah.
that I'm talking about. But it's, these are just things that that would be great to have this vision in the plan when these things are put in place to make this, it looks like we care. When people come in here and go, hey, this is great. This looks beautiful.
I 100% agree with you, and I want to say we just talked about that in our meeting with Kimley Horn yesterday. So I believe that may be a part of the ordinance, like wayfinding and signage and things like that. It's also in our SPLOST. It's also, there you go, it's in the SPLOST. I do know those bridges in particular, those are more CIDs that did those too. But yeah, but I know that was, I just remember we just talked about that yesterday or today. The meetings are getting mixed up, but. Right.
Yeah, and I was only going to mention, I know Chris should say, please get rid of the mic. On the monument signs, and like you mentioned, CIDs, I mean, those are very expensive. I mean, one monument sign can probably cost about $100,000. So once you make the decision to invest in those, you really want to have a plan. And I'm not going to steal Jonathan's presentation. He can talk about that under community development. But typically, specifically with those, especially where you guys are, you're dealing with state routes. You have to get permission. So there's a whole process that you have to deal with. So we're getting there. It's just there is a process. But those, I'll let Jonathan go further in the community development, how that all ties in with the plan. But yes, it's not cheap.
I don't think mine's going to be nearly as exciting as Chris's, but and I'll just jump right in. I'm Jonathan LYNN. I'm the Community and Development Services Director for the city. And just since we're transitioning, we do have a project proposed in the SPLOST to look at a kind of a signage master plan throughout the city. That'll include, what kind of gateway signage we want to look at, examples of where we want to put it, directional signage, getting people from point A to point B. You may be at the mall, but you're trying to get to Sweetwater Creek State Park. Find some sort of attractive signage to get you there. I know everybody's seen what they have in Sandy Springs or what they have in Smyrna or what they have in Roswell. Maybe something like that. Now, as Marcia said, we can't do all that at once, but as we start going, we have a plan, everything may start looking uniform. Hopefully we get the county on board if they like what we're doing, to kind of have everything look a little uniform at that point. Now, granted, we don't know what that's going to look like yet. We are in the process of doing our downtown master plan. We have literally just gotten started with that process, so we're hoping to have a plan within the next 5-6 months that we're able to release to the public. And more than likely, I can't predict what's going to be in there, but more than likely signage is going to be an aspect that they would like us to put a deliverable in and to be able to produce something going forward. So hopefully we'll have something on that by the end of the year. I know Councilman Segal gave me a list of stuff he wanted to make sure I talked about, but I do want to mention, Chris didn't mention it, he and I were very fortunate last Wednesday to be on a panel at the Georgia Planning Association conference about the Sweetwater, the Thornton Road Master Plan, where it was unique. We probably had a room twice the size of people. They didn't look at their cell phones. None of them got up and left during the presentation because it was unique. A lot of plans can have city and county, cooperation and collaboration in the plan. Ours actually had the Economic Development Authority as the driver of that plan. That they're the ones that saw the effort and they're the ones that got the collaboration together. And I'm actually very shocked at how well that presentation turned out. I don't think Chris and them are getting enough credit for actually spearheading that. I don't know that the city and county would have come up with that on our own without what they're doing. And Kimley Horn actually talked about probably submitting that for some sort of planning award this time next year for what we're doing. So we're hoping that keeps going and it spearheads other things going on. One of the things that we talked about in our planning group was how not only are we focusing on industrial, but if you're commercial, I don't want to say industrial. That's a bad word. Sorry. But for you residents, how do we bring things here to keep y'all from going to Vinings, to keep y'all from having to travel to get to what you need? Where granted you could bring a Panera Bread here and it does great business from 7 a.m. to 2:30 in the afternoon. But then when all the workers go back to wherever they live, which is probably not out here, more than likely that business is going to fall off. How do we work on something to ensure that we're keeping things here? And I do have some statistics that will actually kind of prove what is going on here. Since July 1st of 2016, the city has issued 149 permits for new single-family homes. 32 of those are right down here in Tributary. We roughly about $10 million in new value for single-family homes is concentrated in that one little area, which is about 25% of the overall value that's been contributed to the city just during this time. And if you want to put that in perspective as to how we're doing as a city, in that fiscal year 2016, the city issued 79 total new permits for single-family homes. That's total. That's throughout every ward, every part of the city. And just so far through the end of March, we've issued 32 in FY17 for tributary.
3 months to go.
That only goes through March 31st. So, everything's picking up. We're hoping that, that continues. And there's some other areas out here that the plan is going to identify, these are prime areas to continue that residential growth. I know we talked about commercial, but there's a very big residential component in that plan to make sure there is a balance of uses. Chris wants to make sure, and everybody wants to make sure that, if we do get another Google, we have somewhere for them to live. They don't need to live in downtown. They don't need to live in Decatur, that we're giving them reasons to stay right here in Douglas County. So we're very proud of that. We're excited as to what that could end up. And I'll be honest, I didn't realize the amount of growth here until I started looking at those numbers for this meeting. There are a couple other exciting things going on out here. I say exciting. I know everybody's heard about the new racetrack coming out here. That's the project that Chris and I say that project has 9 lives. It was actually approved from a city side, from a planning and development side, before I ever started with the city. And just last week, they finally started the demo work for what was there. They do not have their building permits from the city yet, so we don't know when that's going to take place. They've just got the approval to do their demo work. That's all they're doing at this point. So the way things work, it may be 4 months before they ever get a building permit, and then it may be another 4 months before they start building. I wish I had better news. It looks like they are actually going to build that facility.
Does anybody not know where that is? Because we can look right out.
Go out of here,
and
take a right, and it's going to be on the corner. Now, in its defense, I know it's not ideal and it's not what everyone wanted. It is going to be a racetrack brand, so it will be a known brand of. They don't want to call it a truck stop. I think they're just calling it a gas station, but it will have enough room for semi-trucks in the back.
There are zoning conditions that will, no showers, no.
Yeah, there are going to be no showers.
It's
not like walking into a pilot where it says stall number 37 is ready for X number of person that's coming in, which does happen if you stop at any, going south toward Macon. That does happen. But we have working with them we've worked with them on their access. They're still having to get all their GDOT approvals to get access. So we're hoping that does mitigate it a little bit from our end. But it looks like it is going to kind of come down the pike.
I want to add one more thing about that. I don't know if most people are aware of this. There is in the plans, the very edge of that property, a cut through from Blair's Bridge around the property to Thornton Road. So they'll be able to access from all sides of that. They actually donated that strip of land to the city, but I believe they're the ones who are going to be building that road that goes around there.
Yeah, that is correct. And I tell you that to give you, kind of set you up on that one. We do actually have some really good news. If no one has heard, the city has been approached by a very well-known hotel flag. They are going to demolish the Cinder Block Hotel and build a brand new hotel.
Anyone not know where that is? Across the street.
If you don't know where that is,
next to the Hilton Garden Inn.
That's actually,
chain link fence.
And normally it's when we get conversations like that, we're all like, But they've actually started looking at their plans. They've submitted their plans. They've started going through a development review from our end to look at what they're doing. I was asked not to reveal the name, but trust me, it's one that we don't have in Douglasville or Douglas County, and it's one of your 3 big flags. It is kind of like Hampton Inn is a Hilton flag. It'll be something very similar to that. Actually, if you look at their website, when you find out, there's only probably 5 of them in the country right now, and they're looking at continuing to expand it as a competition for your one-night stay hotels. I'm here for the night, and it's like a Courtyard by Marriott, then I'm going to the airport, that sort of thing. But we were very excited about that. We were literally in the process of typing up a condemnation letter, and I don't know if they knew we were doing it. They have cameras in our office, but it came through, and they seem to have made good progress on that. So we're hoping, keeping our fingers crossed, that'll happen. In addition, looks like the other part of the property where they store all the outdoor, whatever you want to call it, equipment, trash, someone else has bought that side, and that's actually going to be developed at the same time. It's not going to be part of the hotel site. So keep your fingers crossed on that one. We're looking forward to that. What else?
When the economy starts improving, things start moving again.
It does, and I told Chris I don't know that they got wind of what they were doing out here with the study and looking at this area, but the timing is coincidental, however you want to look at it. But the residential's up. People are still looking out here for commercial uses. It is still very close to I-20. It's still, the area got hit fairly hard during the recession for all the commercial that's there, but what is there is still thriving. And I think people do see that, the access to I-20, the quick access down Camp Creek Parkway to the airport. I think that is a benefit for this area, and it will continue.
And what's interesting about that site is it's in the city limits, even though the Hilton Garden Inn right next to it is not.
That is correct.
Now, there's also another parcel right next to this hotel as you go down Bob Arnold that is supposed to be a hotel site, or was supposed to be. Any interest in that you're aware of?
I don't know of any interest in that one right now, yeah.
No, right,
No.
this
Literally
undeveloped
adjacent right
land
here.
right here at the corner of Preston Boulevard and Bob Arnold
There.
is
Yeah.
right next to this hotel. So. That's a good question. That was the other thing I was going to ask you about. Where
I don't have an answer to that
projects are.
one.
Now, it is busy because it's open and you see trucks and people taking things in and out of there. So I'd like to know what they like want to do with it.
We will find
Yeah,
out.
we'll check on that one. I do not have an answer for that one. Uh-oh. I think Madam Mayor has a question.
It's your meeting.
Yeah, you're free to speak. Absolutely.
Thank you, Councilman Segal. I would like the citizens to know it has not fallen on deaf ears. We do hear those amenities and beautification efforts that is all across the board in this city and the county, I'm sure. And we're looking at that and trying to do some things. For example, the bins that have, what's our?
Donation bins.
Donation bins. We've passed an ordinance to limit those donation bins so that you don't have 2 or 3 in the same businesses and they're not overflowing. We've looked at, we can't resurface all of the sidewalks and subdivisions and on the main streets, but we do have a transportation plan. AECOM is going to come and talk to the council, and they'll give us a list that prioritizes the streets and what are going to be resurfaced. And there are some community folks that have been doing litter pickup. The Omegas, the fraternity, does Fairburn Road. They've been doing that for about 5 years. Once a month, they pick up trash there. The Kappas have Highway 5. The AKs are trying to get Douglas Boulevard. So there are people in the community. We're looking at those things. I know that street lights, flowers, bike and pedestrian trails, having your bike and being able to drive downtown and park and go and eat, those are things that make a community a community. And so we're looking at all of that. It's not, the big picture with the great gateways, but can we just pick up the trash and, straighten out the sidewalks and clean up things, not everything look gray. You need some Clorox or something, but some greenery just to make things look a little bit better. So we do hear what you're saying in the interim of having those big projects, looking at the little things that make a difference.
Speaking of green, what you could do is bike, and we'll put that Krispy Kreme that everybody says is coming on the way to downtown, right? And the other thing,
Riverside Parkway is another thing. It's an interesting road. It's partly in the city, partly in the county, but it's a county road, and they've repaved it recently, and they're currently in the process of putting bike lanes in there. But there's also the question of the bridge over Sweetwater Creek. You want to talk about that?
we do have a little bit of an update on that. Probably back this time last year, the city sent out a bid for some preliminary engineering for that bridge, for a firm to come in and kind of tell us what is going on with the bridge, what would need to be fixed, what kind of rating that bridge would have. If you can think of the bridge as one of your kids, one of your students at school, it was probably getting about a C- with no hope of ever going back up to that A. It was only going to get worse as time went on. So as it stands right now, the city is going to start the application process to start applying for some Georgia Department of Transportation grant money through the Atlanta Regional Commission to start working on getting the pylons and everything for that bridge shored up to bring it back up to an acceptable rating. Unfortunately, the way transportation money works, we'll be applying in May of this year for funds for the year 2021. We have been assured that it's not, to the point now of us having to worry about it during that couple year period, but it is on the radar to, start doing the improvements to that bridge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Keith?
What are you doing to continue the sustainable growth of the residents that you've seen in the tributary area to attract more residents as opposed to commercial growth?
You know, I would like to tell you that we have some grand strategy that we've been hitting the streets with, but Douglasville and Douglas County the community was ready as soon as the market picked back up. All of our abandoned subdivisions, we had developers coming in ready to build, and it's not just in the tributary Ward 5 area. On the north side, we have Ashley Falls and Braylon Manor and Gateway Village and the subdivision at Brookmont. Those are all they're all in full swing right now.
No offense to Chris, but if there's not investment in residents' amenities, not specifically neighborhood amenities, but for residents of Douglas County, it's not sustainable. So the focus on the commercial is the wrong direction if you want to create this master plan for a vision of Douglas County, because people aren't going to come for that.
Okay.
Part of that is entertainment and family and all of that.
What are we doing to attract, the right businesses? Is it the movie industry? I mean, there's no secret that the movie industry is in Georgia for the tax benefits.
I think Chris has a great answer for you on this one. I know a little bit about what he's going to say.
So
He's got you.
In order to continue the sustainable resident growth, what else is there for us to do?
So to answer the question, so yes, my specific role is to commercial development here. Our strategic plan is focuses on 3 areas: advanced manufacturing, which includes like metal fabrication, aerospace, food processing, medical device technology development, professional services and technology, which addresses things like data centers, back office support, and those types of operations. And the last one is media and entertainment. Media and entertainment is focusing on what you just described, things like the film industry, film studios, and things like that. Things that hone in on our assets. One of the greatest assets of Douglas County, we have over 8,000 acres of dedicated recreation space in our community, which is not a common thing. And so building upon those resources to attract people, to enhance them. There's a trail system that's coming in play from Boundary Waters to Sweetwater Creek State Park. That trail system is underway. Looking at things that attract millennials to this area. I think I said at the beginning, it's about how do you prepare the community for generations to come. And that encompasses everything that you just said. So we're not ignorant to those things. It is very much a core to the plan. I have a monthly meeting with the mayor and chair, and that was the last meeting we had was that very thing about how do you create the environment that attracts people, that attracts talent to the area and enhances the opportunities and values of the properties that are here. So we're very much covering the gamut as it relates to that strategic plan and that vision. It's not just a commercial focus. That is just a component of it that our office will own. But the other components of it are very much embedded, will be embedded in the city and county planning and zoning, comp plans that are coming out, the downtown master plan. All those things are taking those things into consideration.
Kind of going back to the question that the gentleman had back there, I believe that was Keith. I guess the bottom line is, when do we know there won't be any more commercial properties built on Riverside Parkway? Like, when is there a limit to the amount
When it's fully developed,
of commercial properties built on
with
Riverside
whatever
Parkway?
gets developed.
Yeah, I don't know that there is an answer to that one.
If a
from our
property
end.
owner wants to build something and it's properly zoned for what they want to build, there's not a lot we can do to prevent it. If they need to rezone to do that, though, that's a different story. Because then that's when we need people showing up at the zoning hearings and the city council meetings to voice their objection.
Okay, so you've been keeping us up to date on that, so we just need to show up. Gotcha.
And from a staff standpoint, we get a lot of questions about why did we let an application go through? If somebody makes an application to the city, it is not if we say it's not within the zoning and they make a rezoning application, we just forward it on to the zoning board, and then it goes to the city council. Staff does not tell anybody no, that you cannot try to do this. So when you see something go to them and you say, well, why did staff let it go through? We do not have that ability to stop it. We can say, no, you can't build a 300 square foot doghouse in your backyard. We can say something like that. But if someone wants to try to rezone their property, we do not have the ability to stop them from that process.
And Jim is on our city zoning board.
Yes, and that's why I picked on him.
If you want to yell
Yeah,
at him,
yeah. And that's, and if you guys want to, if you think the process doesn't work, we had the rock quarry, residents came out. I know that's a touchy subject, but people came out, people spoke, council made their decision. We've had a few other instances where, the concrete washout. Yes, that's where, public, get your support in, get to your elected officials, talk to them, and let the process work its course.
And yes, the citizens did come out for this property that's in between this hotel and Sweetwater Creek Apartments and the Sweetwater subdivision, and that didn't go the way that the residents wanted. I don't have a response to that, but.
Hi, I just have a quick question. Liz Calypso, and I live next to Anthony over here in Sweetwater. Is there a process in place where, for you to limit the amount of businesses that, even though they are commercial, that, because I think we're saturated with hotels here. Everywhere you turn around, there's a hotel being built. We have this big monster over here, Marriott is building. I don't know what they're doing with the other 2 properties they own here, but we're oversaturated with hotels here. Is there a limit? Do you guys have a limit, or is there a limit on anything like that?
If the property is already zoned so that a hotel would be allowed there, we cannot limit it. The reason why they want to put the hotel there is because of the market. This is a very fertile market for hotels, that close to the interstate, that close to the airport, that close to Atlanta. We really can't stop it. We don't have that kind of legal authority.
Yeah, and normally, and I think I know where you're going with that. Like if you want to look at something that, you can only have within you can't have one within X number of feet of another one. You usually look at your establishments like a beverage store or an adult entertainment establishment. Those are the ones you'll commonly see. It can't be within X number of feet of a school or within another establishment. Normally, hotels, lodging establishments aren't going to fit into that category. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Kevin?
Getting back to the hotels and stuff over here, is there a plan in place, anything in place that would at least maintain the integrity of the area so it doesn't, so Fulton Industrial doesn't come out this way? So it doesn't look like 20 and Fulton Industrial. I mean, I know that's a dramatic change, but, and even at Six Flags and 20, it's not the best area. I mean, is there a way where we can, is there a plan in place, or at least are we thinking about that to where people come in, it's nice, it's well lit, sparkly, shiny, it looks great, families want to spend the night here, versus like, I want to pull in, no, I'm heading down the road.
And we actually met about this yesterday morning. We're going to talk after the meeting if you have a minute.
Okay.
So Douglas County has essentially an overlay text for their zoning for this area, which they're tweaking, and the city is going to look at tweaking and working with our council to see and zoning board to adopt that same overlay text where you have to be so far back from the road. You're required to do X number of landscaping. You're required for sidewalks. You're required to do lighting. You only can have so many square feet of signage, and it will encompass this area as well. It's not just going to be Riverside Parkway. It's going to come all the way up to I-20 to take that into account. And just having conditions like that and requirements in your zoning already, that can go a long way. Where you can have only certain kind of lighting for your signs. They can't be internally lit. They have to be external. Where kind of if you think about Regions Bank in downtown, like there are no lights in that sign. They kind of come from lights that just shine out from the building. At that point, right now that's all we have. I don't know if there's any other plan. I don't know of one in place to stop what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about at Fulton Industrial, and I don't see that happening. I hope it doesn't happen, but I know what you're talking about.
I would also add that,
what's that?
As you
CID, yeah.
As you go down Bob Arnold here, some of these hotels are in the city and some are in the county. So it would be the appropriate jurisdiction would have to apply those standards. So this hotel's in the city. The 3 on the other side of Bob Arnold, the middle one being closed, of course, are in the city. But all the rest on this side of the street, as you go down to the other end of Bob Arnold, those are all in the county. So the My Place, what's the other one, Springwood or Spring Hill? And then the one under construction is actually 2 hotels in one building. That's also in the county.
And that's one of the reasons for looking at doing the joint overlay text is whether you're in the city or the county, your requirements are going to be the same. It's going to be uniform for what regulations are put on you, whether you're a new residential development or you're a new commercial development going in. it's going to be the same. You're going to have the same requirements and look the same. And that's kind of what we want, so that, you know, mayor has a big property in the county. She doesn't like what they're telling her to do, so she's just going to try and annex into the city, which is fine. We'll take her tax money, but it's still going to look the same. Your regulations are still going to be the same, whether you would be in the city or county. Now, we're just in the middle of that process. It's not been adopted. It's not been codified by anybody. Councilman Segal has just heard about it for the first time about 30 seconds ago, so we still have to talk to him about it and then get it before council and zoning board.
Anyone else?
I don't know if you guys.
Wait, the mic's coming around.
I don't know if you all mentioned this as of yet. Is there any plans for restaurants, like upscale restaurants or something more?
We would love to have restaurants. We can't build them. We can make sure the zoning that's in place allows for restaurants, and it does. But
And I think that, you know, I think everybody kind of understands where you're coming from. And I think once you start looking at the master plan for the area, once you start looking at how things develop, those restaurants will come back. They will come to this area. Once you get the residents that don't leave, that knock on wood, that stay here, they don't leave after 5 o'clock, that they have something to support your upscale, your Marlowe's after 7 o'clock at night, when all the building people, they work here, they leave and go home, but now they're staying in this area. You give them a reason to stay, and I think all of that will kind of go into itself. It's going to take a while. It's not going to be overnight, but I think it will happen.
And I know of one building in particular where restaurants do want to move into, but right now the property owner isn't leasing because he's trying to sell it, and he thinks he can sell it better empty than with somebody in there who already has a lease that might not be terms favorable to what a buyer would be looking for. Jim.
Yeah, well, before when you were talking about the engineering study on the bridge on Riverside Parkway, and you said it's a county property, are there any city funds that are involved in that research, or is it city and county funds merged, or?
I'll answer that.
You got it, okay.
When the city handed over the parts of Riverside Parkway that were in the city to the county, so the whole thing would be a county road, there was one except for in there, and that would be any projects that are currently being worked on, the city would still be responsible for. So the funding that we're actually applying for, it's actually federal funding that comes through the state. 80% would come from the federal funding, 20% would come from the city. And that means 100% comes from all of us. So federal funding, city funding, it's all coming out of our pockets. So yes, there would be a portion that we would be paying for, whether it's through our general fund or through SPLOST, remains to be decided. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bring Marcia up here because we're going to talk about SPLOST now. We've already talked about a lot of things that we were going to talk about, but let's go ahead and start with roads. And the study that our engineer is doing.
All right, and I'm Marcia Hampton, the city manager for the city. So I'll just preface this by saying some people get confused about what the city manager does. I just deal with the operations of the city. So Richard is one of my bosses, the mayor is one of my bosses. So I have 8 bosses. And so as a body, I report to them and we manage the operations that are set via ordinance and policy by them. One of the policies that they set forth for us was, of course, to manage the SPLOST program. And part of that is a significant amount. 45% of our anticipated SPLOST revenues go toward transportation. AECOM was the company that we hired. They've also done the study for the bridge to take a look at and assess all of the roads in the city of Douglasville. So I do have that 71-page report on my desk. So I've committed to the mayor and the transportation committee chair. I will have it ready to review with them. And that just deals with the necessary maintenance and upkeep. That's not talking about beautification that we've talked about earlier. That's just potholes, resurfacing, those maintenance issues that we have. What I do know, what I can share with you is that basically, AECOM is an engineering firm that does a ton of projects all over the state of Georgia and even in some other states, and they are very transportation heavy as far as their level of expertise. That is part of the reason why they've been selected to do this. There is about a little over $5 million estimated in the worst road conditions within that assessment that we will need to tackle that I would say would be a priority. Then there's
and those roads are not in the Sweetwater subdivision. subdivision.
Correct. And then there would be another about $3 million or so that would be in the category of they need resurfacing, but you have a little bit of time to wait. And then there's other categories like just potholes, patching. And then there's a process that we're still investigating before we present it to you that they recommended to us, which is rejuvenation, which what rejuvenation is basically where they almost melt the road, if I'm going to say in a layman's term. I'm not an engineer by any sorts. And then they build. I'm sorry? You're married to one. I am married to one. He's electrical, though. He's not transportation, but I am.
So we wanted electrical roads.
He could, and if we started a utility, he could come and work.
That might be a
come and work
conflict
here.
of interest.
It probably would be. And I would not want to be his boss. That probably would not work out. So essentially they melt the road and build it back up. So that's not a process that we're necessarily familiar with in the city. So before we would take that on, we would definitely need to have some further discussion with the elected officials. But what we do know is that the resurfacing needs to happen. Some of the roads that were mentioned earlier, they are also on the county's list, as Chris mentioned earlier, that the county is doing a very similar process. We're not necessarily using the same engineer, but what we are doing is providing each other with the same report. Because what we don't want to happen is for us to put out a bid, say it's a $5 million package worth of roads, and we're over here doing one road in this subdivision, doing another road in that subdivision. That's actually going to increase the cost for the citizens. It's best if we start in pockets and we phase things. So if there's connectivity in subdivisions, we're handling all of that subdivision at one time. We're handling all of this area in one time. So we want to make certain that we're doing that to be able to provide the best resources. And as Chris said, $7 million is not a lot of money. $5 million ain't either. So, and the total anticipated proceeds over the 6 years of the SPLOST is only $37 million. And we typically at the city project very conservatively. So myself and the finance director, in the back of our minds, we're working on $32 million. So when you look at 45% of $32 million, again, that's not a ton of money.
And there's also, when it comes to roads but not SPLOST, there's an annual local maintenance improvement grant. It's called LMIG.
Yes. That
we get small amounts of money that we can also use. So
this year we have the 2015 LMIG that we're wrapping up. We have about $45,000 left in that. The 2016 we have not bid out, and nor have we bid out the 2017. On May 11th at the council committee meetings, we will be presenting that along with the AECOM report to be prepared to bid both projects out. In transportation, you get the biggest bang for your buck when you bid more projects together because it's based on mileage when you're paying for asphalt. Again, I'm not a transportation engineer. I just work with good people who provide me good information.
These paving companies don't want to go spot places all over town. They want to bring all their equipment to one place and get it done.
Exactly. And really to give a perspective of the small amounts of transportation money that were in Douglas County and specifically for the city, typically we get about $325,000 to $350,000 in LMIG, and that was all of the transportation money that we had in the budget. So if I told you that $7 million, or Chris said $7 million, I said $5 million wasn't a lot of money. So you can see that really in the last 10 years, the city has not been doing a lot of pavement. And that's really the reason why. Asphalt costs money. And when you're only looking at $325,000, you're typically not going to get a ton of companies running out to Douglas County to want to pave roads when there are counties like Cobb County and Paulding County who are, in the multi-million dollars of projects. Yes, we get certain things done, but you're really talking about, small amounts of mileage when you're talking about $325,000.
So we have some subdivisions that haven't been repaved in
ever
30 years.
Mayor, has your street ever been paved?
One portion. I've been there 22 years.
Yeah.
22 years. It's one portion.
And that's not uncommon. There are portions of Chapel Hill that have never been repaved in Chapel Hill. So, and those are some of the older portions. Some of the other things to touch on with SPLOST as it relates to transportation, there were a lot of intersection conversations. And going back to the comment about CIDs, we have, through the Development Authority and through the city from times throughout the course of just over time approached the businesses about a CID. To be quite honest with you, there hadn't been a lot of joy to say, hey, I want to jump out and do this. So we know that that's the reality that we're dealing with. We at this time are not going to be able to do something as aggressive as what you see in Cumberland Town Park or even on Camp Creek Parkway. But what we as staff have presented at a work session to the elected officials is why not at a minimum do a beautification project along the interchanges within the city of Douglasville. So those would be things like when you see some of the trash and you see inmate crews coming out picking up things, we can do landscaping areas that are low maintenance. It's going to cost. Our early estimates to do those 4 interchanges in the city limits of Douglasville is about $500,000. And that's just installation costs. That's not maintenance. We will have to pay a landscape company to maintain it. We don't have landscapers on staff. I believe our folks are good, but that's just not what they do. So we can pick up some trash, but we are not going to, maybe pull in some weeds here or there, but that's about it. But to have it maintained to the level that you're expecting, that's really going to require a level of service that we're going to have to provide, we have to get from a landscaper. Now, over time, what we hope is that within these interchanges, Thornton Road, using for an example that Chris mentioned, maybe we can get a CID and that individual group can take over that. But we will have started the initiative that we're doing something. There are other larger projects that we're looking at as far as larger intersection improvements. I'll use Douglas Boulevard for an example. That would be a great CID, but the reality of it is the mall is not necessarily ready to do that as we can see it. We know that road has not been repaved since the mall's been there. Is the mall 20 years yet? 96? It's over 20 years. So it's over 20 years, so that road has never been repaved either. But we're looking at possibly doing certain medians, improving the lighting in that area, putting in some landscaping. But all of those things are going to be cost to the city via the SPLOST. A project like that from Chapel Hill Road over to Highway 5 is probably going to be close to possibly $2 million, but that's out of that 45%. So if I've already told you about close to 10 is going to resurfacing. So we estimate that 45% at about 13 to 15 million. So I only got 3 left. So I've already spent $500,000 on the interchanges. So I really only have one big project left. So I say this to say that when you go and you drive in Cobb County and you pretty much, are stomping your feet, honking your horn, upset because every piece of pavement is being resurfaced in Cobb County, the reason they are able to do that, and I'll use the city of Smyrna as an example, their entire SPLOST program, about $52 million of their SPLOST, their whole program, goes specifically about 80% to transportation. But Cobb is a community that continually receives a SPLOST. So I can tell you that approximately $32 million that we receive from the city, by the time we cover operations, there's a very small amount left for capital. We haven't bought tractors, we haven't bought garbage trucks, we haven't bought and replaced any of our capital equipment. All we've done is repave roads.
It's been a long time since the city of Douglasville has participated in a SPLOST because the most recent SPLOST paid for the jail, 100%. There was no money for anything else in the county and nothing in the city. Right. Two intersections I want to mention that are close to here that really need some work are Thornton Road at Maxim, Thornton Road at Riverside Parkway. Both of those intersections are county, and they are both on the county's SPLOST list to get fixed at some point.
And a couple of areas just to mention, so we've mentioned transportation. We have about 20% goes to public safety. That includes body cameras. We did include in a SPLOST budget amendment just recently for body-worn cameras. Do you have a body camera on back there, Officer Graham? No, ma'am. You don't? Okay, he doesn't have one. I was going to get you to do a demonstration. He's one of the nicest guys ever. I promise you, he is. He really is one of the best. We have great officers, but he really is. He's my favorite. Don't tell anybody. We'll have about 40 body-worn cameras for the officers. We're looking at those. Karen and I are also, we did find out that we can buy police vehicles out of SPLOST, so we'll be talking to the elected officials about that during this budget cycle. When it comes to, we're buying about 6 vehicles a year. The police chief, he buys about 2 or 3 also to help to buy some out of drug funds. We cannot buy all the police vehicles out of drug funds because that would be considered supplanting. Providing public safety service is something that we're required to do by law. So the fact that we can't ask the chief out of drug funds to go and pay for something that is required for the officer. We do have a take-home car program. So we do have one man, one car. Somebody made the comment one time in a meeting about 2 police officers riding in a vehicle. They were watching NYPD Blue or something like that. We don't do that. So we have one man, one car. We also are looking at a joint project with the county, and I can't tell you where this is going to go. Radio service over in this area. We do know that the county is on a antiquated radio system that really they know themselves have said that they're looking to enhance, to improve. We're on Cobb's system. So what that means is every time Cobb upgrades, so do we have to upgrade, but we can talk to Cobb quicker than we can talk to Douglas County. Cobb is on the latest and the greatest. He has awesome service back there because we are on the best system. We do have the best technology. So the police chief and the sheriff are talking about getting a better system for this area in general. We do know that we have a lot of issues in this area that we need to make certain that our officers are safe and that they're communicating. So that's something to look forward to. And that will require a radio tower. A radio tower estimates that it's going to cost somewhere between $1.5 and $2 million. That does not include the land to put the tower on. So again, you kind of 20% of the 37 million, and we're working on 32 million. That bucket of money is pretty much spent, so we can move that one to the side.
You want to talk about the fire station?
I will talk about the fire station. The fire station over in this area, it is a county project. What I can tell you is that they have said for a long time they have the land, they know where they want to build it. The county administrator and myself were talking today, so that's something that they're going to aggressively move toward. So you will see that happening fairly soon. I would say probably sometime within this fiscal year starts in October, but you will see that happening soon.
That's on Douglas Hill Road, and because of our agreement with the county on cost sharing on fire EMS, we are also contributing part of the cost of the construction of that station.
Your dollars that are contributed from the city government for fire services are $1.6 million annually. So that's in the 32 million I should say, that we have overall in the budget. So we're working on budget. So that's kind of, well, actually, to be honest with you, you got to know the numbers. So you know, people ask all the time, why can't the city get? So if you don't know the numbers, you'll probably get trapped. Parks and Recreation. Parks and Recreation, so Chris Pumphrey mentioned Highway 92. So as you know, there is a major reroute of Highway 92 from Paulding County to Douglas County. If you've been on the north side of town, you understand the struggles of the residents on the north side, including Jesse Davis Park, which the park has essentially been split in half. So we knew for a long time that there would be some serious infrastructure improvements that we have to do at the park due to the road reconstruction. So we have about 20% of the monies from the SPLOST program to go to deal with parks, and specifically a large amount to deal with Jesse Davis Park. There will not be enough to redo the entire park. Hunter Park, for example, I'm probably going to say the wrong number, so Kelly, fix this. We can't really fix it, but if I do say it, forgive me, please. But I can tell you it was over $10 million in the last SPLOST to redo an entire park. So park improvements are not cheap. What I can tell you is that it'll at least get us a start in doing some redesign, talking to some engineers about construction, and there are park planners that we're also talking to through the process to make certain that we're headed in the right way. We know the road's coming. It's going to be there. It's going to completely change the face of Jesse Davis Park. So when you come down 92 where you weren't able to see Jesse Davis Park, now you will drive right by it. will literally face Highway 92. Some other issues that we're dealing with parks is that we don't have a maintenance facility for our park system. So when guys want to use equipment or the maintenance shop, so I don't know how many folks in here know that across from Fire Station 10 in downtown on Church Street, that across the street from there, it was the old fire station that was below the old City Hall. So some who know where Stranger Things and all that's being filmed, it's all in that building. So that's where actually our parks maintenance is located. They're not even in the park. So we need to have a maintenance facility that's at the park so the folks can utilize the facility equipment at the park. So that's part of what we're using the monies for. And that leads me into the last bucket, which is facilities. I would love for you all to come and visit our maintenance facility, because I would love for you all to see that on a small parcel of land behind Airway Christian Academy on Club Drive, how we operate with 40 guys with commercial and residential sanitation service, as well as all of the maintenance for facilities, streets, and transportation, and how we're able to park and deal with all of those trucks on a very, very small piece of property. Our guys don't have a proper place to have safety meetings. I try to go down there once a quarter, and we have meetings in the shop on equipment, rain coming down, and they've been that way for a very long time. It is time, one, for safety reasons, just for quality reasons, that these guys are able to work in a facility that represents the city. Right now, if there's an issue with one of our garbage trucks, we cannot operate on that truck if it's inclement weather, because there's not a bay that we work out of that the trucks can fit under. That we don't have. So we're looking at putting our administrative offices in one of the city's buildings downtown on Church Street, which is really will be a renovation. And then on the north side of town, we own property and land, and we're looking at moving our utilitarian services over to the north side of town, which will include complete fleet operations for the guys to be able to repair and work on the vehicles. And then also in there, if we have some money left over, if some of you have been to City Hall recently, Jonathan's over Community and Development Services. He talks about codes. We probably, don't abide by our own codes in City Hall. But we do need to do some renovations for City Hall to start operating in modern times. And then there's certain projects that accompany the downtown plaza that includes the Welcome Center. So what wasn't mentioned was the project and the work that's going on downtown in O'Neill Plaza also was a transportation enhancement grant that included the renovation of the Welcome Center. Because that was only $600,000, we had to eliminate the Welcome Center. So if there's some monies left over, that's only 15%, we will do the Welcome Center. If not, we're going to hope that the citizens would feel as though that we have done well with their monies, and by the time this SPLOST program is over, they will be willing to vote for another one so we continue the capital improvements. I will say this to end with SPLOST is that from my perspective and how I try to recommend to the elected officials, SPLOST really should allow the elected officials to do projects and things that relate to, one, it's required capital improvement, but those things that are above and beyond what you can normally do in your general operation budget. We just don't have a ton of money. We're not like a lot of cities that have utilities, so we don't have a gas fund, an electric fund. My husband was mentioned, he works for the city of Cartersville. His budget, he's a deputy director there, is the size of the city's budget. That tells you the difference when you're operating with a city that has utilities and all of those other resources. They can tap into other things. So the SPLOST has been a tremendous help for us. It may seem slightly slow, but I can promise you by the end of the year, you will see dirt moving and you will be complaining, why did I get tar on my car? Or why are they doing this? And I can't believe they're inconveniencing me this way. But please believe that it is for progress and it's for you to help improve how you operate. So hopefully I covered everything.
Want to talk about the bond?
The bond. Cash up front. So because we did do an intergovernmental agreement with the county, we bonded with the county, so we were able to save you all, the citizens, some money, because you only had to pay one bond fee, one bond attorney, so you didn't have to do both. And the county, we can get money up front, which means that on April 1, we got money in our account. So the county collected $50 million up front. We did approximately $21 million up front. The catch is we have to spend 85% of that $21 million within 3 years. But I just told you, we got to spend $5 million on roads. So basically, y'all know pretty much that money's gone like today. So we have to have the money obligated. So we really felt like there could be a tremendous amount of progress that we can do and we can get moving if we have the cash in the bank. So the cash is currently in the bank. So we've made body cameras, as I said, we've made those purchases. You'll see some planning documents that are going to lead to some capital projects. So when Jonathan mentioned the master plan, the hope is signage, those monument signs that you mentioned, that's a capital project that we can get done.
Okay, so let's talk about some of these plans. Chris Pumphrey mentioned the Southwest Thornton Road study that's going on. He also mentioned the countywide strategic plan. We've talked about the study of all the streets. There is a sidewalk survey out there through Georgia Tech. We're just starting a downtown Douglasville master plan. Pretty soon, we'll be interviewing firms who have submitted proposals for a City of Douglasville branding and marketing, communications, and what are we calling that study? Branding, marketing, and communications for the city. We haven't done a good job of saying what our identity is, what is our DNA for a marketing perspective. We want to be able to talk about the city in a cohesive way, so we're going to be starting on that shortly. What the parks?
We have the parks. We have a parks plan that's going to come up, a master plan. And a parks master plan is this. And when Chris mentioned we have all of this acreage when it relates to parks. The question is, what services do you want that are associated with your park system? So one of the things that we've heard over the last couple of years, all you have is ball fields. You have very limited passive parks. Well, a master plan will allow the City of Douglasville to follow a guidebook to say, this is where you should be putting your money and your parks money as far as resources. So, and I will say with plans, some people, oh my God, they're doing all these plans. From a staff standpoint, when we have a plan, that's our guidebook. That's how we work. That's what we go to the elected officials and say, hey, in this X plan, this is where we're headed. This is how we know how to do capital planning. Thanks to the current group of elected officials, the City of Douglasville adopted its first 5-year capital plan, or I should say we presented a draft 5-year capital plan in January. If you don't understand what a significance that is, and really to say that a city our size in the metro area did not have one, that is huge.
Ever.
How do you plan your capital resources without a plan? So when we do the plans, they are plans that are going to be utilized. They're not going to be ones that are sat on the shelf. And when Chris mentioned the master plan, they're all going to funnel up and talk to one another. So when someone else does a plan, the information, the housing study, that's provided so that we're not duplicating services, so that we're actually providing something concrete to you, so that when you come to us and you say, okay, what are you doing with this? We can tell you the reasons why. And we understand. You just don't want to know that we're just building this. You want to know why and what's the benefit and what value does it serve to you.
Last year, we had a hotel study,
Yes.
feasibility study for downtown as well. We're not the experts on all these fields. You elect us to represent you, but that doesn't mean we have the expertise in all these things. And so that's why we do go to the experts to give us advice that we can then use to make decisions on.
Yeah, and to that point, that was a very wide choice. Because I know I've been a part of decisions that were made without a plan, and the study basically said we weren't ready. So no money was invested.
And you know, those who want to come to our community and make investments, whether it's businesses or developers for residential, they can look at these plans too to see where our thinking is, what it is we're looking to have.
Did I cover everything?
Any questions?
Is there a budget or forecast of the amount of money that we're putting towards the consultants for the plans? You know,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, a good example, I'm trying to use downtown master plan is an example. We kind of have an estimate of what cities pay for downtown master plan. So when we presented that to the elected officials, we said, okay, this is the estimate. So it can range from 50,000 to 100,000, but we also know the comfortability of the elected officials that we won't ever be on the high end. So we typically, through the budget process, put in the total dollar amount for those plans. So we have budget workshops coming up on June 1st and June 2nd. We will be presenting not only the general fund budget, but all of the other special funds, tourism, so on and so forth. I can name them all, sanitation fund, but we also deal with SPLOST. So one of the things that I try to tell staff is that everything that you think that we're going to do in this fiscal year, please put it in the budget. So that's the time that you, the citizens, can hear that, and then the elected officials can have the discussion. We do have budget amendments throughout the year, but I really try my best not to have a budget amendment on a major project unless it's driven by the elected officials.
And our budget workshops are open to the public. Anybody can come in and sit and listen, can't speak, can listen, when we vote on the budgets. You know, all of our voting meetings, all of our work sessions, our committee meetings are all open to the public. You can all come in and witness what we're doing to get comfortable or not with what we're doing. Barbara.
Thank you. My name is Barbara Janetta Smith. I live in Silver Creek Ranch. I need to change the subject for a moment, talk about something that's dear to me, which is homelessness. Do you have anything budget for that? And I realize the issue is not being homeless, but mental illness. And Douglas County, the city, have a lot of homeless people, I'm learning.
Yes, ma'am. For the last, I would say maybe 5 years, we have partnered with United Way and contributed and matched with the county $10,000 for, at one point they called it the Street to Homeless program. I'm not quite certain what they call it now. Essentially, that program, some of you know Charlie Branson, who worked with United Way. They would go out into the areas and they would try to minister to these folks and ask them to see how we can get them from the street to a home. Now, I will tell you that several of those issues that for those folks who are not willing to take the transition to a home, it's due to mental illness. Now, anyone that our law enforcement officers come in contact with, we're called. Typically, not only do we go out, but we also call the nonprofit organizations that are within the community to help us to come and minister. Because if you call out the police are going to police. You know, yes, we want to be helpful, but at the end of the day, they're policing. So we try to call out a Charlie Branson or United Way or one of the churches to come and help. But we try not to, one, arrest them if all possible, because it's a vicious cycle. You're putting them in jail and they're just going to be released. So because we don't have a homeless shelter in Douglas County, and I think one of the judges may be working on that, I'll just say it's a problem that dates back for a very, very long time that many of us in this room know, and we're working on it, but we're trying to work on it in a way where we're relying on our nonprofit organizations rather than us policing. And that's not the message that we really want to send. But we also understand if you're a business and you're having an issue, we're going to come in and basically enforce the law.
You covered expenditures. I was curious if the city has reserves.
Yes.
Out of all those expenditures, because it sounded like you pretty much spent the bank money and or the money that you had brought in from the SPLOT and the bond. But do we keep a reserve and we're in good shape as far as that?
We do. I know my personal goal, basically the city has a resolution that we try to keep 2.5 months of operating expenses in the reserves. We have more than that. We have almost 5 months. My personal goal is to have 6. As a municipality, you never want to have years of reserves, because what that says is that we are not investing in the community. There are some cities that you'll look at their budgets and they have probably 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And the question that I always ask, okay, what's being put back into the infrastructure. So my goal with the, unstated goal with the elected officials and with staff is we want 6 months of operating expenses. But of course, that ebbs and flows with operations and how we can save. We do have millage rate hearings. Pretty much they happen once we get the tax digest from the tax commissioner. That happens sometimes around August. Last year, the elected officials decided to roll back the millage. I can't tell you what they're going to do this year, but that also plays into how much money we typically bring in as well.
Anyone else? All right, then I think we can just open it up to questions on anything in general. What time is it? Almost 9? Okay, so we only got a couple minutes. We'll bring Madam Mayor up here to say a few words, and then we're going to take a group picture as well, so
Okay,
you all get to
great.
be
Now, there was
on the
a
website.
question raised about transportation, and we've had comprehensive conversation about all of the topics, but there was something about transportation and connectivity with the region, and I believe Mr. Pumphrey's brought that up, and then another person referred to something about connecting. The chairwoman, Miss Tiffany Stewart Stanley, is here, and she's Tiffany's like, oh, me. No, she's not the chairwoman, but she's on the staff. But the chairwoman gave her 100-day update yesterday at the courthouse, and she talked about the connectivity that the county and Tiffany, you can come up and correct me or help me get it together. They're going to have 4 buses called Connect Douglas, and so 2 routes, and those buses will, there's some on the north side and then some in this area that will take people to work that live within Douglas County. So it's kind of like Cobb County system. It's a CCT. So it will connect residents, and they've already purchased the buses. They'll be here at the end of the year, and they're going to launch in 2018. In January
and they're
2018.
not big buses like Cobb Community Transit. Think more like a church bus.
There are 15 passenger vans, and that buses. That includes the driver and then wheelchair access.
Yeah, so that is that. And then we have Greta, which takes people from Douglas County into Atlanta to MARTA stations. We did have a meeting today that Mr. Pumphrey was in, that our delegation, Representative Roger Bruce was there, and some other folks from the state that talked about MARTA and if we were open to that conversation. And so there was it was a robust conversation about that. I won't say an argument, but I believe the sentiment in the community is kind of changing in that people are more open to connectivity for work, to bring MARTA on the outskirts, and this area would be a prime area to have MARTA for folks to come in so they'll be able to get to work. So that was a part of the conversation that we talked about with the governance body for the chamber. Connectivity with MARTA, and if we're open to doing that. And I don't know if Avalanche or if the study's going to say that we need to connect, but we are part of the Atlanta region. I'm on the Atlanta Regional Board, and in transportation, and we're talking about connectivity all over the region, and Douglas County is kind of left out of that conversation with bike, pedestrian, and connectivity with MARTA because we're not connected to the rail system. I lived in D.C. for 8 years, and I can get on the bus and go Washington, Maryland, Virginia. I didn't have a car for 6 months because I moved there from Ohio after college, and it's nice to be able. I worked in McLean to get from Maryland, Silver Spring, Maryland to McLean every day on the Metro, and we don't have that option here, but we'll see. So I just wanted to talk, because someone did mention that, and I don't know if we addressed it or not.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank everybody for coming out, and I want to thank all of our speakers who came out here, and thank City TV for recording this. You'll be able to see this on City TV's YouTube channel, on our website, broadcast if you have Comcast on City TV. I don't know what the schedule will be, but watch it a lot. You may be surprised. On my Facebook page, for those of you who have Facebook, I recommend you follow it. I know that sounds immodest. Like the page. I post a lot of information on there relating to the City of Douglasville, meeting agendas, links to the videos of our meetings, other things that are going on in our city and the county as well. It's easy to find. Just search on Richard Segal, Douglasville City Council member. I know, it's real creative. Or if you want to just type in a URL, go to richardsegal.com, which will redirect you to my Facebook page. That's Segal, same as legal, except with an S. RichardSegal.com. That takes you to my Facebook page. And if you're not on Facebook, don't do it. It's dangerous. And it's wonderful. Many things at once. So thank you all for coming out. We're going to have everybody come up here for a group picture, and then you can go merrily on your way.